Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. I am your host, Austin Render. Dalton is out today. Exciting things going on with Dalton. We'll talk about that later on this fall, but he is out today, which means that I run things solo. We're going to be solo not too much longer as Kim Barnes-Arico, head coach of Michigan, is going to join us here. We had a chance to talk to her, or I had a chance to talk to her yesterday. So a wonderful interview. You're going to really enjoy this if you're Michigan fans. So hang on. We'll get to that here shortly. A reminder, this is the Dribble Drive podcast, available on Apple and Spotify podcasts. We're a part of the Back Home Network YouTube channel, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. If you want to check out our stuff, subscribe to that YouTube channel and don't miss a minute of our episodes. Follow us on X at Dribble Drive WBB. We're less than a month away from the Big Ten Media Days. We're going to have plenty of content coming out from there on X. So make sure you're following us for show updates, clips, and any social content that we have out there from the Dribble Drive. If you like what we're doing and you listen to us via podcast, give us a rating, leave us a review. That kind of stuff really helps. And as we say each episode, tell one. If all of you tell one friend, we immediately double. And we want to continue to grow this thing, especially with basketball season less than 2 months away. We're continuing on in our preview episodes. If you are looking for your team and you're like, man, I was hoping today was our day. Well, there's a lot of teams we have already previewed. So if you're looking for the likes of Maryland or Illinois, USC, Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan State, Oregon, Minnesota, Iowa, Purdue, Northwestern, all those episodes are available. Head to the YouTube channel, head to our podcast feed. You can check it all out there. We still have Indiana, Rutgers, Wisconsin, UCLA, Washington, Ohio State to come in the rest of our preview episodes. Those are going to take us all the way up, by the way, to October 28th will be the last preview episode, episode 70. That next episode will be the first Tuesday of the regular season. It'll be a full preview episode. We're really, really excited to get this thing started, but we still got some more previewing to do, and that will continue today with the Michigan Wolverines. This is a Michigan team that surprised a lot of people last year with the run that they made. I remember having Charlie Cream on the show in August of last year and asking him, are there any Big Ten teams that you don't have in your field in this preseason that you'd be open to considering maybe they could make a run? And he said, no, I just don't see it. And he mentioned Michigan. He said, yeah, they're just young. They're new. I don't see it. A lot of people didn't see it. And there they came out of nowhere. First game of the year, they nearly beat South Carolina, defending national champions. They played Oklahoma tough. They played Ohio State tough, a couple of the LA schools tough. And then they finally started getting those big wins in Big Ten play. And all of a sudden, here they are as a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. 23-11, 11-7 in the Big Ten last year. Obviously, it's the trio of freshmen, now sophomores, that are going to be the people to watch as we look forward to this season for Michigan. As we look at the team graphic for the Wolverines, you're looking at a Michigan team that is, I mean, look, this is a team that's going to be powered by these three on the graphic. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're podcasting with us, it's Olivia Olson, Silas Swords, Mila Holloway. They all average nearly 10 a game. Olivia and Sila each 16, Mila Holloway 9.8. Had to be a point guard as a freshman in the Big Ten. That's not an easy job, and she did a really good job with it. So those three are back. Brooke Corals-Daniels is back. Tayala Del Foss is back. Another one of the class, now a sophomore. And then if you're watching us, those bottom two on the graphic, and if you're listening to us in podcast form, it's the transfers, Ashley Solfolkanik and Kendall Dudley. Going to be really important adds to this Michigan team. Solfolkanik is a big, average a double-double at Bucknell, almost 20 points a game. She's a junior forward. And Kendall Dudley's versatile, can play anywhere from the 3 to the 5. Didn't get a ton of playing time at UCLA. She was a McDonald's All-American, highly talented. Just got stuck behind a really deep and talented UCLA roster. So she finds herself now at Michigan with a team loaded with McDonald's All-Americans. And so she's going to be a big part of this thing as well. Mackenzie Mathurin is the top freshman coming in, a top 40 recruit. Sierra Byers, Jessica Fields, also top 100 recruits. So another great recruiting class for Michigan this year. The question is, can these ladies avoid the sophomore slump? They don't strike me as people who would get hit by that. But again, we've seen crazier things happen to where some of the best players as freshmen do hit that sophomore slump. And Kim Barnes Arico talks about it on the part of the episode coming up here shortly. They're going to be atop of everybody's scouting reports. And maybe they were by the end of last season. Maybe they weren't. I mean, you still had Jordan Hobbs. You had to deal with Greta Kampstrader, who were both pivotal parts of last year's run. But they're going to be atop everybody's scouting reports. They're going to circle Olivia. They're going to circle Sila. They're going to circle Mila. These are the three we really have to pay attention to. Obviously, Volcanic, Dudley, some of the others are going to be big parts of this team. But these are the three that really strike you as these are the top of what you've got to figure out when you are playing the Michigan Wolverines. My expectation for the starting five would be these three guards, Dudley and Volcanic. And then you've got some depth coming off the bench. Can they kind of develop that depth as they go through the season? This is a team that played five guards pretty much all year and figured out how to create matchup mismatches with that five-guard lineup to their advantage. But I still think that in a perfect world, you want to have a five that you can depend on, and they might have that now in Volcanic. Now, they still have to get her up to date and adjusted to Big Ten level play as opposed to Bucknell. So that will take a little bit. But having a post option in her, having a big option in Dudley, somebody who's versatile, is really going to help this team moving forward. You look at those freshmen as well. Sierra Byers is a forward. So there's some more depth at that forward position. So that's going to be big for Michigan, is can they develop some sort of big presence? But as you're going to hear from Barnes Arico here coming up, she's not opposed to running the five-guard lineup again. Certainly not all year, but is not opposed to it being a part of their offense again this year. So I think they found something they liked last year. It worked, and now they'll try and run it back again. I think this is a top three team in the Big Ten. I really do. In my rankings, which are going to become pretty solid here shortly when we submit our preseason rankings for Big Ten Media Day, I have them number 2. I believe in this group. I think Volcanic, if she plays anywhere near she was a double-double machine last year. Bucknell averaged 20 points. If she averages 14 and 8, that's what this team needed last year. They were one big away from maybe being a hosting team last year. So I think they've fit that perfectly. Now, Jordan Hobbs, Greta Kampstrader, that leadership, that playmaking ability from those two is certainly going to be felt at some point. But if these freshmen and these transfers can get going right off the bat, I think this Michigan team can be even better than they were last year and should be a team that's competing to be a host school in the in the NCAA tournament. I know Dalton agrees with me there. I don't know. I think he probably has Maryland ahead of them, if I'm not mistaken, in his rankings. But we'll certainly hash that out as we go through the preseason here. But this is a Michigan team that I am really interested to see how they play, really interested to see how it gels early, because the nucleus of these three sophomores, Olson, Swords, and Holloway, is as good as any nucleus anyone is going to have in this conference. So excited to see what that looks like this year for Michigan. Again, our preview episodes are going to continue to roll on with the likes of Indiana and Rutgers and Wisconsin, UCLA, Washington, Ohio State, still all to come. But for today, it's a Michigan episode. And yesterday had a chance to catch up with the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, Kim Barnes Arico, to chat about this upcoming season. Hopefully we'll get Dalton back on the podcast soon. Big things coming for him. We're excited to talk about that as the fall rolls on, but he is out today. So I am sitting solo with head coach Kim Barnes Arico. Thanks for listening, everyone. Stick around for that conversation with the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Our preview episodes will continue to roll on each Tuesday here on the Dribble Drive. Let's get to that conversation with the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. And welcome in to the second part of our podcast as we're joined by the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, Kim Barnes Arico. Coach, thanks so much for joining us. I know there's not much of an off season at this point in basketball, but how's the off season going for you?
It's going great, Austin. Thank you so much for having me on the show. The off season is always fun. Every year is always different, and it's about building a new team this season. So it's been great to get to know our team.
Well, we'll talk about this coming team here in a moment. I do want to go back just for the early part of this and go back to last season. Before the season, there was certainly a lot of like, okay, this is a new Michigan team. This is a young Michigan team. We weren't sure how quickly it would all come together. And we found out on day one when you guys played the defending champs that it was going to work. When was it that it hit you that this team of a very new looking team was going to have that type of potential that you ended up having?
Maybe on day one when we when we played against South Carolina. I mean, as a coach, you're always worried, and we had so many new pieces and so many unknowns going into the season that I wasn't sure what it would look like. Sila was coming off of the Olympics and coming off of really playing all summer. So her preseason was all about recovery and resting and getting her body right to get ready for her first college season. So her preseason wasn't very long, and I didn't really see her in a ton of action early. I knew Olivia Olson was built different. She came to campus and ran her first mile as a freshman in 5:40. And that's something that's never happened inside our program. That's never happened with me being a head coach to have someone come out and run a 5:40 mile on their first mile. So she was just another level, and her work ethic and her commitment to excellence and wanting to be great was something that really stood out. So I knew she was definitely going to be special, but that doesn't mean the transition to playing in the games at the college level is going to be easy. So, Mila Holloway, I knew that we were going to have to start a freshman point guard. You never really know what that's going to look like. That could come with some ups and downs. But she had a really good preseason. And then, Jordan and Greta just embraced their role and wanted to do anything to help Michigan be successful. And, we said the quad squad because Jordan, Greta, Alyssa Crockett, and Macy Brown were the only four players we had returning last year. So that quad squad was, excited for the season, but a lot of unknowns. So, yeah, I certainly didn't know what it was going to look like. But after the South Carolina game, that definitely gave us hope moving forward that we definitely had some pretty good pieces.
I want to highlight a specific two games in the Big Ten season. January 25th, you guys welcome to Michigan State in, and the Spartans got you by 30. But then just about 2 weeks later, you go to their place and beat them 71-61. A really impressive turnaround for a young team. What did you see? And this was kind of a stretch where you beat Indiana, Nebraska, and Oregon and Michigan State. What did you see that kind of led to this response from your program?
Yeah, up until that point, we hadn't lost. We had lost a few games, but we hadn't lost badly. We were in every single game, and every single game went down to the wire, whether it was winning or losing. When Michigan State came here, we always talk about the rivalry, and when you have so many new players in your program, they don't really understand the rivalry.
Yep.
Well, Michigan State understood it, and they came here and they punched us right in the face. And we tried to respond at times, but we were really never able to get over the hump. And I think, that was kind of a wake up for our young team. Just the toughness that they brought and just the competitive fire that they brought to show us what the rivalry really was. But our kids are so competitive and are so fiery that they really took that to heart. And I think, from that point on, we really understood that, you can't go into any game, whether you think you're supposed to win or think you're supposed to lose, you need to show up. And they wanted that game badly to turn around less than 2 weeks later and go to East Lansing and pull it in front of a sold out crowd and pull out the victory there. I think just really spoke volumes about, the grit and the fire and the resiliency of our team.
You played pretty much all of last season without a starting big. It was a five-guard lineup that you guys ran. Talk a little bit about what you and your staff had to do to kind of make that work and what advantages that gave you playing five guards against some of the teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, great question. I mean, if you go, back to, a few years in our program history, and, whether that was Hallie Thome or Saisha Gori or Naz Hillman, we always have had tremendous, tremendous post players. I remember a few years ago, we said, it was either Naz's junior or senior year, we led the country in most points scored through the post. And that was whether Nas was scoring or passing or causing double teams or whatever it was. We were number one in the country with points scored through the post. Well, coming into last year, we didn't have a true post player, a dominant post player. So I think, one of our things as coaches is we always want to find the strength of your team and play to the strength of your team. And some coaches are strict with what they do and really don't make adjustments. We were of the philosophy of, hey, we're going to play our five best players and see what that looks like. And at that time, that was playing five guards, and it was playing Jordan Hobbs at the 4 and Greta Kamstrader at the 5. And when Greta first got to Michigan, she played the point for us. So really, through her time with us, she played every position 1 to 5. We talked yesterday at our season ticket barbecue. She was the smallest 5 in the country, and sometimes she was facing players that had 6 or 7 inches and 50 or 60 pounds on her. But just her willingness to try to defend, her willingness to do whatever it took. And Jordan was the same way. I remember when we played USC, she took 3 charges in the first quarter against their All-American post players. So it was just being smart about how we were going to defend and just really being super active and really being intentional. And then on the offensive end, I think it really gave us a major advantage. We were able to put Greta in a lot of action against other teams' 5 players, and that gave her the ability to get a lot of open shots. And she was such an incredible 3-point shooter for us and such a nightmare problem for other teams that it really gave us an advantage. So it was a year of really playing chess and trying to, figure out what our matchups were and could we take advantage of our matchups. And I know, we were in a number of situations where different teams, especially if we had to play them twice, they would try to switch the matchup and they would try to put a guard on Greta, but then it meant a post would be guarding Jordan or a post would be guarding Olivia. And then we had to figure out how we were going to attack that matchup. So I think it was kind of a fun year in that sense. And it gave us the ability to do something that we never did before. But now going into this season, it makes me think, what are our best matchups? Should we go 5 guards? Should we go with a post player? And the ability to have both those things in place, because I think it definitely presents matchup problems if you're able to play both those lineups.
I was going to ask if you've ever had to do that before, but you said first time you've done
Yeah.
that. So now the five-guard lineup's in your head. Maybe
Oh
we're
yeah.
going to see more of that from Michigan.
Yeah. It's been really fun. It's kind of been fun in the preseason to try to look at that 5-guard lineup compared to the one post lineup. And a few years ago, I had 2 post lineup. So this has really transitioned. I know the NBA has changed, and I've had many assistants over the last 10 years say, we got to shoot more threes. The game is threes, get behind the line, no pull-ups, threes are layups. And, I kind of originally was, a different philosophy of, no, we're going to play through our posts. Teams like Baylor of old, they played with 2 dominant posts, and even LSU played with 2 dominant posts. So it's trying to find really what works for you and how you can be most successful. But even if you study UConn, who won the national championship last year, they played with Sarah Strong a lot of times at their 5, and she's like, the most positionless of positionless players. She's, the point forward who can do everything. So if it works for you, I think you got to find, how to play to your strengths. So we're in the mix of trying to figure that out right now.
Well, you added Soul Volcanic from Bucknell, and we'll talk about her in that post position. But one more thing on last year, you've mentioned a lot about Greta, touched a little bit on Jordan Hobbs. You had such a young team. You had this quad four that you were bringing back. How important were those leaders with a team that was young, that was new, and allowed you guys to quickly pick up the pace like you did early in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak enough about, yeah, you say the quad squad, which we called them.
Quad squad. Okay.
Their commitment to stay in this changing landscape, their commitment to buy into whatever it was their role was going to be, was really vital to the success. And obviously, that was Greta and Jordan, but Macy Brown and Alyssa Crockett really owned that as well. So those four took a tremendous amount of that leadership, and especially, Jordan and Greta, really helping our freshmen transition, and our freshmen being such elite players, but really taking them under the wing and teaching them the Michigan difference, and teaching them, what it meant to be a part of Michigan women's basketball. And I think another piece was a little spark that we had in a transfer in Brooke Daniels. Like, she gave us a tremendous spark, and just brought an intensity and a dog, in her that really allowed us to compete at the highest level. And when I think about that Michigan State rivalry, she was probably one person that really understood it growing up in the state of Michigan and really wanting to be a part of that. And when she came to Michigan, she understood that Michigan State battle. And when we lost at home and we went back to Michigan State, there were points in that game where she really put the team on her shoulders, and owned that rivalry. So having a spark plug like her definitely helped, and having a sixth player like her, coming off the bench and being as fiery as she was, definitely helped. But I think we certainly leaned into the returners, especially Jordan and Greta.
Well, let's talk about this year's team. We've got an exciting year coming up for Michigan. Let's start with that trio of freshmen, now sophomores. You mentioned earlier about what you expected from them for year one. How can the three of them, Olivia, Sila, and Mila, all take a step forward? What are you looking for in their games in year two?
Yeah, sophomore year is always a little bit more challenging because now people know who you are. I mean, they are circled on everyone's scouting report. And, last year was probably Jordan Hobbs that was circled at the top. Well, Jordan Hobbs isn't here anymore. So, now Sila and Liv are certainly circled, but also Mila, she had a great freshman season. So she is definitely going to be at the top of people's scouting reports. I think the off season, and I think for them, understanding the college game, understanding the grind, understanding the length of the season, and really what it takes to take care of your body, to eat, to sleep, to recovery, like all of those things that when you're thrown into the fire freshman year and you're just trying to swim without sinking, they know all of those things. So we always talk about experience being the best teacher. Well, now they have a year of experience, and I think that's really going to help them in those moments. And I think their growth, consistency, and that's what we challenge with them with every single day, the consistency to be great every day, the repeat performance, not sometimes the freshman year seems a little bit of a roller coaster. And we didn't really have that from Sila and Olivia. And that's why they're, all conference players, all American type players, because they didn't have as much of that roller coaster. Mila had a little bit of it, but I also, in Mila's defense, playing a point guard as a freshman on the highest level, sometimes that comes with some bumps in the road, but she handled that. And I think this offseason playing with Canada basketball and on that U19 team, I mean, she's come in, and had a really awesome preseason. And I think she's getting that experience and that comfortability under her belt, which I think will certainly help her. we didn't really talk much about Tayala Delfas,
Yep.
but she was, a fourth player in that mix of five that signed with us last year that had some unbelievable games for us. Her points per minute scored are probably one of the top on the team because she's like instant impact, instant offense off the bench. And she is a 6'3" wing that can affect the game in so many ways. And she had a really good preseason as well. So I can see her adding to that sophomore mix. And I know you'll probably talk about transfers differently, but Kendall Dudley is also in that class. So when I think about that class, they have five players that can certainly come out and impact our team this season. They're still young, but they have some experience, especially those three. So we will turn to them for sure.
I remember we were in Ann Arbor, Indiana was, and people behind me before the game were talking about how excited they were about Delphos and her potential. So that's certainly a piece we should not forget about as we talk about your team this year. Let's move to the transfers. I want to start with the player we mentioned earlier, Ashley Solfolcanic, who you got from Bucknell. We just said you played last season playing five guards for a lot of the season. So how much does it help to bring in a post player that has the experience and the production that Solfolcanic had at Bucknell?
Yeah, I mean, that was key for us in the transfer portal. And Ashley being a unbelievable student, being a great student at Bucknell, which is a good academic school as well. And then averaging a double-double and really putting up great games where she had like 40 points in different games and player of the year in their league. That was the key for us, is getting a true post player and someone that could really rebound the basketball at the level that she could rebound it and score easy buckets. I think sometimes that's still the hard part for me, being in this game for so long, is, man, do we ever get an easy bucket? When you play five guards, it's like everyone is like, oh man, there's no easy layups. It's not like Naz Hillman down there, bing, 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 bing. It's like we have to work so hard for every bucket. So I think Ashley was really important for us. And I also think Allie Van Timmeren in the same breath. Like, she was a transfer from us last year from Boston College coming off an ACL. And last year was a little bit of a transition for her at, our level coming off of that injury. And the same will be true for Ashley. It's a big jump coming from Bucknell to the Big Ten. And I think Ashley has really recognized that in practice this summer. But her length and her ability to score inside and her ability to rebound the ball is something that, she has, and something that, will continue to grow the more accustomed she gets to playing against this level of competition on a daily basis.
And Kendall Dudley, also a part of that transfer class. She comes over from UCLA, where a loaded team had her kind of further down the depth chart, so not as many minutes for her. So what should Wolverines be excited about to see from her on the floor when she wears the maize and blue?
Yeah, Kendall Dudley's another McDonald's All-American. I mean, she played in that game with Olivia and Silas, so she came out of high school as one of the best players in the country. She's just, another positionless kid, a 3, 4, 5 kind of combo kid who can face up, a great decision maker, score the basketball, great at cutting, great at finishing, tremendous rebounder, and just makes others around her better. So can score the basketball, but just has the ability to win. She wins everywhere she's been. She was at Sidwell and she won state championships. She played for Team Durant and they won. And then she went to UCLA and she helped them win as well. So she's a winner. She affects the game in many ways, and she's definitely a position that we need.
Winning is a skill. I always say that, and she certainly has that. You bring in another loaded freshman class as well, top 100 recruits. Maybe with how good your freshman class was last year, it's not a fair comparison to always compare to what you brought in last year, but how quickly can this year's crop impact your team?
Yeah, Mackenzie Mathurin is a dynamic guard who can really score the basketball. We're going to need her to do that. She shoots the three phenomenally. And that's, we're going to need her to really knock down some open shots to help us handle pressure. She scored the ball a ton in high school, and I think she's going to bring that ability to us. She also has a toughness and an edge about her that we love inside our program. We always say the hardest working team in America. She's someone that I need to make sure she's getting enough sleep, getting enough rest, getting enough food, getting enough water, because she lives in the gym. When she's not in class, she is in the gym. You can find her here at 6 a.m. You can find her here at 6 p.m. And that's kind of the, what we love, what we say is the Michigan difference. And I think that speaks to the whole freshman class, but she certainly leads the charge. Jessica Fields is, a shot blocking, rebounding, motor kid, that the kind of kid that has always been successful inside our program. And she is another worker. She led our shot challenge this summer. She lives inside the gym. She's just a tremendous kid that just gives us something that we didn't have, kind of a face up four kid that is just has a relentless motor. And Sierra Byers just has been phenomenal. She's taken a major step forward in the summer workouts, because she's another kid that's coming off of an ACL injury. So she was a phenomenal high school player, tore ACL, didn't really play that senior's summer AAU or really much of her senior season, because coming back off an injury, and she's still trying to get to 100%, but just a super high IQ kid, a major toughness kid, plays the game the right way, super coachable. So their entire class has just been phenomenal thus far.
Well, we've asked a few coaches who have been in similar positions to you with Michigan in that kind of 6 to 9 seed range last year in the NCAA tournament about expectations, goals for this upcoming season. Is it fair to say that your goal as a team this year when it comes to the NCAA tournament is to try and be a host school, try and get that home court advantage for those first 2 rounds?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the goal. That's like life changing in our game. If you could be at home, and we were able to do that once, and we were able to advance. I just think anytime you have a chance to play on your home floor and have your whole city and state behind you, and your fan base and your season ticket holders and your parents and all of that, it's just really great energy and a great opportunity to advance in the tournament. So that certainly is the goal, for sure.
And we've asked a lot of coaches this. Dalton, who's normally on here with us, brought this question up to Robin Freilich, and we've gotten great answers not only from her but other people. And she mentioned that look, there's so many things changing in college sports, NIL, transfer portal, all that stuff, but the good in coaching is still there. And so it's been interesting to hear all the different coaches talk about what their good in coaching is. For you, do you agree with that? The good, the reason you got into coaching is still there. And what are those things that are so great about getting to do what you get to do?
I love our team. I think we have the greatest collection of humans in the world. They're just great people. They happen to be phenomenal, phenomenal basketball players, but they're even better. The good in coaching is getting to do something every single day that you love to do, and it's not a job. It's not work. It's not, oh man, I got to get up today and go and have to do this. It's like, oh man, I get to get up today and put on this Michigan shirt with this pride and this tradition that I get to be a part of the greatest university in the world that prides itself on excellence. But I get to come to work every day and be around 18 to 22-year-olds that are driven and passionate at the highest level. And they bring in this energy and this enthusiasm to life. And it keeps me young. It keeps me feeling like I'm 25 years old and I could, run a marathon. Not really, but it's just fun. And I feel fortunate that I get to be surrounded by such a great group of people that make it fun every single day.
That's a wonderful answer, and I know that that's a sentiment felt around that this Michigan team is going to be a lot of fun to watch this season for sure. One last thing, as we kind of talk about the changing landscape of the Big Ten, Obviously, it requires a little bit more travel, obviously more for the West Coast teams than those of us in the Midwest. But how did you feel like your team handled the trip out to Los Angeles, how you went about doing that, and how you look at year two of having to do the West Coast travel?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that we have a team of people around our program, but around all the programs at the University of Michigan that are making sure that we are getting the best resources and the best education to be as successful as possible. So whether that's our strength coach, our nutritionist, a sleep specialist, a recovery specialist, a dietitian, whatever it is, I think we try to plan to be the most effective and efficient team that we can be. Obviously, it's not great to have to travel and to have to do this, but when should you do it? And when should you wake up when you're on the road? And when are you going to be the most efficient? And when should you do your study table? And when should you put the little mask on and earplugs in? So we learned a lot of different things last year that I think will help us be the most effective that we can be. And it just comes with it. I think, part of being a college athlete is, preparing you potentially to be a professional athlete too. And that means taking care of yourself at the highest level and figuring out your body and when you can be the most successful and effective. So, traveling out west, it's not my favorite thing, but it's not about me. So, um, it really doesn't matter. I think it's really important how you approach everything. And, if I'm gonna be negative about that and say that to our team, then they might be negative about that and
Yep.
think it's not a positive thing. So we're gonna put a positive spin on everything we do and try to attack everything, that way. So it's great. I think people come to Michigan, myself included a long time ago, is for an opportunity to compete against the best and put yourself in a position to do that. And our league does that. You are going to have an opportunity every single night to compete against the best players in the country, the best coaches in the country, at the best universities in the country. So heck, if you have to go a little bit further to do that, so be it. We want to test ourselves against the best.
That's awesome. Let's end on a celebratory note. You became the all-time winningest coach at Michigan this past season. What was the celebration like for that, and how cool of an honor is that for you?
Yeah, it just makes me feel like I'm getting older. I've been in the game for a really long time. It makes me feel like I've been at Michigan for a really long time, which actually is one of, the ultimate goals. And I always say, Gino said this to me when I was a young coach in the business, consistency. It's easy to be not easy, it's never easy to do anything, but one hit wonder or just be there every other year, every so often. But to stay, consistent year in and year out is really the goal. And, we have been fortunate to have some amazing players here at the University of Michigan that we have been able to do that pretty consistently, which is really special for me. And that's probably the most special thing, is to reflect on the players that came here, the players that came here before we, were a consistent NCAA tournament team, the players that came here before we hung a banner, and the players that still consistently come here because they believe that they can win a championship and do something great for the University of Michigan. It also made me reflect on some, unbelievable coaches that have been here. I just bumped into Coach Beeline in the neighborhood, yesterday, and our dogs had a little play date, and just to, talk to like the Hall of Famer that he is, and the legendary coach that he is. And, I got to learn from him and watch him, and, even the same for Coach Howard, and now, Dusty May, and just to learn from those guys that I get to share a building with. But even, Carol Hutchins and Ronnie Bernstein and, Bev Flocky and all the Hall of Fame, the best of the best, the goats of the goats that come to the University of Michigan, and not only in men's basketball, but really on the women's side, and what they have been able to do at this university and how they've won championships, and just to watch them and learn from them, and to even be mentioned in the same sentence as some of the best that have ever coached their sport is truly an honor for me. And it's motivation just to keep on going until we can hang more banners.
Did the team and the staff do something for you? Did you get some balloons or some
Oh,
cake or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
something?
yeah. Yeah, they always celebrate for me. I try not to pay attention to too much of that. Yeah, I mean, I think, I just talked about all the other great coaches at Michigan, but you know, winning at Michigan and being the winningest coach at Michigan, truly, and this is not baloney, it's truly your players and the people. And the people for me is the staff, and the staff that I get to be surrounded by. Like, I raised my family here, without them helping me every step of the way. Uh, God knows if my kids would have ever gotten to school on time or did their homework or graduated from high school. Like, I have just had some tremendous people that have gone on to be tremendous head coaches that are coaching all around the country right now, or that have come back, and Melanie Moore, and said, no, I want to come back and do this again at Michigan. Or someone like Amy Mulligan, who has been with me from day one, and has helped me through the great times and the tough times. But just the people that I get to be surrounded by every day, and that is my staff and the players. And of course, they're always having celebrations. They're always honoring these moments that I try to forget about, and I try to just, like, put my head down and not remember. But they are the best, and they are what make coming to this great university special every day. So yeah, my team and our staff is, second to none.
What's the celebratory dessert for Kim Barnes Arico?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I know, and this is to not really a sweet person, an eater. I am an eater, but
Eater
I
does not.
do.
Okay.
The celebratory. My college roommate always brings to Northwestern the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. So I do like myself a good chocolate chip cookie. I am a red velvet girl,
Okay.
and I do like my ice cream. So those are definitely some things that go on the celebratory sweet list.
There we go. My wedding cake was red velvet. So we're right there with you. Red velvet all the way.
All the way,
Absolutely.
all the way.
Coach, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a wonderful half an hour chatting about Michigan women's basketball. We're excited for this season. I'm sure you are as well. And we appreciate your time. Best of luck this year.
Thank you so much, Austin. Appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, that was Kim Barnes Arico. We're back next Tuesday with another episode of the Dribble Drive. Until then, Austin Render, Dalton Shetler, not with us. Next week. 2 weeks. We'll keep talking basketball next Tuesday.